Good evening, friends, and we are once again live. Of course, we had the chance to meet each other when I was on the Sukna Lake earlier this evening. The topic which we are going to talk a little bit about this evening has been actually triggered by almost a deluge of requests after my last 2-3 talks over the weekend, and the requests have generally come from the NRI friends, more so now that they may find it difficult or inconvenient to travel to India if they want to sell their immovable property situate here. And since this is really not codified very much in law, and if it is codified, it is too broad, and within those broad guidelines, you have different practices in different states. So therefore, it becomes all the more imperative that we broadly know what has to be done, so that for want of small technical formalities, you don't have to then rush back your power of attorney back to your country of residence, that is abroad. Now, a power of attorney for the purpose of sale would be a general power of attorney. And as we spoke previously, it is very clear that if a resident Indian in India has to sell his property, then he has to have a registered power of attorney which he executes in favor of a person. So therefore, he has to appear before a sub-registrar in India to get the power of attorney registered, and once it is so registered, then of course the attorney holder will appear before the sub-registrar in whose jurisdiction the property is situated, and to get the property registered. For instance, your property is registered located in Patiala, you cannot appear before sub-registrar at Amritsar to get the property registered. So what happens when a person is an Indian national, maybe Indian passport holder or not, an NRI in the widest sense, person of Indian origin, an Indian passport holder holding a resident visa, or for that matter, even a student, a visitor may like to execute a power of attorney because he might be abroad for a period of 6 months, even as a tourist, business employer, or whatever visa could be there. So therefore, any Indian, whether technically an NRI or even not an NRI for tax purposes, but for the time being situate abroad, wants to sell off his property in India, this is the general procedure. And I speak in terms of a job, but my sense is that this would be the general practice all over the country, because the general guidelines which we follow are derived from the Registration Act of 1908, which of course is a central act, and of course the general guidelines of the Ministry of External Affairs insofar as how the power of attorney executed abroad has to be authenticated. So first of all, you need to have a power of attorney. Now, you are the NRI, you are situate abroad, you've got property in India. It could be agricultural property, it could be inherited, self-acquired, it could be urban, commercial, residential, built-up plot, irrespective. What we are saying applies to immovable property situate in India, irrespective of your tax status, irrespective of your NRI status, whether you are American passport holder or Canadian passport holder, but a person of Indian origin, OCB, and so on and so forth. So therefore, the applicability of these guidelines is really very wide. But the procedure is very simple. I think my introduction was a bit eked out and elongated, but the procedure is really very simple. you execute a power of attorney in favor of a person whom, of course, you trust and is available to conduct your business or sell the property on your behalf, he should be in India. There is no need for this gentleman, your attorney holder, to be abroad. So you are the person abroad. All that you need to do is to go to a local notary public. Each country would have their own statutes, but whatever within your local jurisdiction is a notary public, you go to him and you say, sir, I want to get this power of attorney executed in favor of person XYZ who is situated in India. You require 2 witnesses. It will only help if those 2 witnesses not only sign, but also their names and addresses are given. If they are Indian passport holders, helps to add their passport number under their signatures. And of course, when you execute, you will give the full particulars of your passport, whether it is of Republic of India or elsewhere, in the power of attorney, and the notary public will sign and attest that power of attorney. You will of course mention who is the person in whose favor you want to execute. It will again help if some identification number of your would-be attorney is mentioned in this power of attorney which you are creating abroad. It could be an Aadhaar number, it could be a PAN number, it could be a voter ID number, so that you are exercising due diligence on your behalf. And similarly, when that person is going to ultimately appear before a sub-registrar, then his identity is not in doubt. Obviously, he is not there abroad to sign there yet. So therefore, the safeguards that you built in here are going to help you in the ultimate consummation of the deal and registration of the document. So once you've done this, a small point which generally people miss is that power of attorney is of course registered, but you also require to paste a passport size photograph on this power of attorney, which must also be attested by the same gentleman, the notary public there. Of course, the instructions are old. I can post them after the talk so that you can go into the nitty-gritty. But a common mistake is that people fail to post their passport size photograph on the power of attorney that you're executing. And if you paste, you do not get it attested on the document itself by the notary. So that is very important. The notary has to sign actually twice, once when he's attesting the document, and then of course countersigning or attesting your photograph as your true likeness. Of course, in this day and age, people are now increasingly beginning to scan that photograph into the document itself, but to avoid any technical bureaucratic hassles, even if it is scanned, no harm in requesting your attorney to also sign across your photograph on the attorney there. So this is one part of it. And now, because earlier there had been various frauds by people purporting to be the attorney holders of NRIs, leading to protracted litigation, and a person sitting abroad, how would he go through the procedure and the protracted civil litigation procedure? So therefore now, for more than 2 decades, the process is that this power of attorney, which is attested by the notary, of course 2 witnesses are there, you take it to the nearest Indian mission. It could be the embassy or the High Commission or the consulate. You go there and they will countersign that. The counter signature has to be accompanied by their official stamp as to who is the gentleman in the consulate general, let's say of San Francisco, attesting, rather countersigning the document, and what his name and designation is. That is very important. because ultimately it has become a routine for us to verify that the gentleman who actually is attesting is in an official position there. Cases are not unheard of, cases are not infrequent where such documents purported to have been countersigned by diplomats of Indian mission abroad have been found to be forged. So therefore we insist that when you go to the Indian mission, of course you'll be carrying your identity documents, they will countersign, and the signature, official stamp, name and designation of the person attesting must be there in those counter signatures. Now this is essentially a safety process. The power of attorney is created the moment your notary public actually signs, but the safety procedure is that your signatures are being attested, are being countersigned by your authorized representative of the Indian mission. So once you have that and a copy of your passport, which should also be attested by the notary, the passport number would be within the power of attorney itself, and separately your passport attested by the notary, two documents, they would be mailed to India to the person in whose favor you have executed the power of attorney. Let me make it very clear that when the Indian mission signs, they are only attesting that you are the person who purportedly signed this. They may make you sign in their presence, or they may compare your signatures on the passport, but they are taking no legal responsibility for the veracity of the document or the legality of the document. In other words, whether you have that property or not, whether you are competent to sell it or not, whether your property is under litigation, there are restraint orders by Indian courts, so on and so forth. The Indian mission is not concerned with the legality of your power of attorney insofar as, or whether your property is encumbered or not. So this is important from the point of view of a person who may be purchasing the property, that he has to do his due diligence anyways. You cannot say that this power of attorney was actually attested or countersigned by the Indian High Commission in Ottawa or the Consul General in Chicago. You have to do your due diligence. But as the person executing the power of attorney, once you have done the needful, attestation by the notary public, and thereafter countersigned by the Indian mission, and do not forget a copy of your passport also to be attested by the notary. The passport number should be within the body of the power of attorney. You mail it physically, no photostat copies, to your friend, to the person who's going to be your attorney. Now that gentleman can approach either the Office of Financial Commissioner Revenue in Punjab, which is on the third floor of the main secretariat, or any of the 5 divisional commissioners for what is called embossing. So embossing is not merely a revenue measure, because the type of duty that we charge is minimal. It is, I think, 1,000 Indian rupees by way of postal orders and 100 rupees as processing fees. But what happens here is that we then also get a form filled by a person, rather the person in whose favor you have executed the power of attorney, and we emboss the power of attorney which came from abroad. Separately, we give the authorization, the person who came after checking his identity documents, his signature, that this is the person Jaspal Singh, son of so and so of Rajpura Colony, Patiala, and we deliver the 2 documents the power of attorney duly embossed. Mind you, the person who is the attorney holder will not be signing on this document, unlike the other power of attorneys which are executed and registered in India. The other document which the Financial Commissioner's Office or the Divisional Commissioner's Office will give would be a kind of authorization in favor of your attorney. His identity certificates which we have relied upon to check his identity would be mentioned there. And when we emboss, we will add a unique number or serial number of our office, which would be absolutely there, in the sense, if anyone wants to verify doubly before registration, he would have a reference to say, well, you registered something on 2nd of June 2020 at serial number 21. Was it, sir, actually embossed by you or not? That would be a second due diligence methodology. Having said that, we deliver that, the power of attorney duly embossed, countersigned by the authorized representative in the Financial Commissioner Revenue's office, as well as the other document verifying the identity and attesting the signatures in whose favor the power of attorney has been executed. And with these two documents, then the gentleman appears before the sub-registrar concerned with a view to execute your sale deed or whatever other document you want to execute. So therefore, this is the procedure. And to just revise and rehash, your power of attorney attested by a notary public, no other authority is accepted. Your local mayor, your senator, your member of parliament, they cannot, for our purposes, accept. Notary public, 2 witnesses, your photograph also to be attested by the notary, a copy of your passport also attested by the notary, and then the power of attorney to be countersigned and verified by the Indian Mission. Comes here in India, 5 Divisional Commissioner's Office or the Office of the Financial Commissioner Revenue, you get it embossed. You, as in your attorney holder, gets it embossed and also gets his own authorization, and the 2 documents together are good and sufficient for you to be able to execute the document. It is within the discretion of the sub-registrar, especially if the property is valuable and if he has any reason to doubt the veracity of the document, which is the power of attorney which is presented to you, that he may actually verify with the embossing office regarding the authenticity of the power of attorney. Normally now, because of, with a view to prevent these forgeries, and now you have the email addresses available, we make it a normal process for us to just scan the document and we send it to the mission abroad and say, have you, sir, attested or have you countersigned this power of attorney? And generally within a couple of working days, I mean, this is subject to time zones and local holidays, you get a verification. And as I told you, it is not infrequent. We've had Mr. So-and-so Khanna, first minister, first counselor in Indian Mission San Francisco, and the person is saying it is a genuine document, and you send it there, and they say not only this person is non-existing, he was never there, there is no such person who's purported to have attested. So due diligence at every stage is very important, and that is what is recommended by the person executing the power of attorney, by the embossing office, by the person who is going to be the attorney holder, and finally both the sub-registrar should exercise due diligence, and buyer beware. Generally, as always, more due diligence and verification by the person who is buying the property, because if anything, you are going to be the target of cheating and fraud. So this is, friends, about the power of attorney. Our friend Major Binapal, District Revenue Officer, Mohali, perhaps made a point. The embossing has to be done within 90 days of the execution of the attorney abroad. So you got a window of 3 months. And of course, because of this lockdown, a number of power of attorneys which had been executed did not come to India, courier services, whatever the reason. Now we have extended that only yesterday by another period of 90 days. So therefore, the old power of attorneys which were executed before today's date would get an additional type of a 90 days to get it embossed. Otherwise, they would have indirectly become time barred, and this would have actually gone back. I mean, you would have had to get it registered de novo. So these are the things, and I'll of course be trying to post a 2-page executive instructions which you can go through and revise in the event you're going to, or any friend of yours is going to execute a power of attorney. I also received a message from a couple of friends to tell them what are the provisions regarding the TDS, tax deduction at source. As you know now, properties, I think over 30 lakh which are sold, the person who's purchasing, making the payment, he's actually required to deduct 1% tax at source and give you a certificate in your favor, the person who is actually selling and receiving the consideration. So if you're selling a property for rupees 1 lakh, 1,000 rupees would be deducted at source and given your PAN number and so on, and you would actually be receiving 99,000. Now, this is a tax deducted at source. The rate of taxation for NRIs is 20%. So therefore, if you are selling any property in India, you would be facing a mandatory tax deduction at source of 20%. Of course, then you can file a return, claim a refund. NRIs selling property in India, they have the same right of exemptions from capital gains in terms of investments, so on. Indexation, it is a separate subject, as any resident Indian. All right, sir, Mr. Mandeep Singh says it is 50 lakhs, fine. So this TDS provision, which is 20%, sometimes you feel is on the higher side. The income tax department separately has a procedure where you can online make an application to the concerned assessing officer, and who can then give you a certificate that a lesser deduction may be made. But this exemption is not a general one. It has to be in favor of a particular person who's purchasing it. So you have to mention who the purchaser is, because indirectly the income tax department is also checking whether the person who's purchasing has the means to pay for that. And in that eventuality, the tax which is deducted at source can be less than 20, and otherwise, of course, you have the same exemptions, but those would operate prospectively. Once the tax is deducted, you will have to file a return, show that you made investment, there was indexation, so on and so forth. I asked a few of my chartered accountant friends that what happens to a case from taxation purpose when you are actually selling agricultural land. Of course, people say NRIs cannot buy agricultural land, but you can inherit agricultural land. You could have agricultural land and as a resident Indian, and maybe thereafter you could have acquired NRI status and so on. And of course, there are laws and rules as to how many kilometers away from municipal limits you ought to be. All of the things are really same. But having said that, whether in case the agriculture land is a pure agriculture land outside the municipal limits, outside the notified distances, a resident Indian does not pay any income tax on that. There is no TDS. So I had posed this question to my chartered accountant friends, including friends in the income tax, as to whether in this case, A, there would be TDS, B, are you actually subject to taxation? That is a question which I would try to separately answer. But for conclusion, all that one would say is due diligence is the buzzword. When you execute the power of attorney, be sure that the person in whose favor you are actually executing the document is reliable. Are you actually giving him the authority to receive money and consideration into his account in Indian rupees, or you have your own non-resident account here which is operated in rupees, non-repatriatable account? So, and then of course your person who has to, as notary public, attest, 2 witnesses, countersigned by the Indian mission, your passport also attested by the notary public. Everything comes here. There your would-be attorney holder approaches the Financial Commissioner's office, gets embossed, also gets his authorization, and thereafter you go to the sub-registrar office, your attorney that is, and you sell off your property and get your proceeds. As to how you can repatriate that money, there are RBI instructions. Resident Indians, I think, are now permitted 2 lakh US dollars per year. It's per calendar year, I think. And therefore, I think the same kind of a thing should also apply to NRIs. But that is something which goes by the RBI instructions. They have quite so any transaction by way of a GPA that will full final payment. That's right. So Major Binapal is referring to a well-known Supreme Court judgment in the sense that if you say that you're going to buy or sell property on a power of attorney which mentions that I have taken full and final payment, in fact it is best to have a recital in the power of attorney itself कि पैसे का कोई लेन देन नहीं हुआ है, no consideration whatsoever been exchanged between you and your attorney holder. Of course, when you go there, your attorney holder goes there to get the deed registered, the local stamp duty laws would apply, and the stamp duty would have to be paid generally by the person who's purchasing. But to avoid any complication, legal complication, if you're trying to buy or sell property on these bases, it would be not only null and void, would also perhaps be hit by the Hawala laws and other foreign exchange laws and money laundering, black money and so on and so forth. So therefore, please accept the money in India. Do not fall into the trap of getting dollars abroad and so on. That would only land you in trouble, and abroad the tax compliance is far more strict and the penalties are far more stringent and prosecution is far more effective. So friends, and my NRI friends who would be, depending on whether they're on the Pacific coast, would actually be beginning their day, and similarly our friends in Far East, it would be past midnight. So once again, thank you for joining, and please stay safe and stay healthy. Good night.